Though we have all traveled many uncertain roads, we have always recognized something wasn't right. We searched high and low, yet our paths had never intersected. Our desire to seek truth, then to speak true, has brought us all together. That thing of ours is rooted in truth, because truth is the only unshakable foundation. In the greatest book, it states in John 8:32, "For ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free."
Truth is a powerful force. It is the foundation on which all great achievements are built, and the bedrock of trust and respect in any relationship. When we are rooted in truth, we can be confident that our decisions and actions are grounded in reality rather than in speculation or wishful thinking.
The pursuit of truth is not always easy. It requires courage, perseverance, and a willingness to face uncomfortable facts. But in the end, the truth is always worth it. It allows us to make better decisions, to build stronger relationships, and to create a more just and equitable world.
From politics and world events to entertainment and pop culture, we've got you covered. We'll explore our history and the stories that matter to uncover the truth that lies at the heart of each one. With our fingers on the pulse of the news cycle, we'll provide the insights and analysis you need to stay informed and engaged. As we stay rooted in truth and let the truth guide us in all that we do, let us be willing to listen, to learn, and seek out the facts, even when they challenge our own assumption or belief.
Let us never forget that the pursuit of truth is not just an individual endeavor, but a collective one. Only by working together
With honesty and integrity,
can we build a better future for ourselves
And for generations to come.
This
is That Thing of Ours. How's it going, everybody? Thank you for joining us today on this Tuesday, 1st of October, 2024. We'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, Rumble, and Pill.net.
and if you haven't already, please take a minute and give us that virtual hug. If you're over on Rumble or YouTube, hit that thumbs up. If you're over on pill.net, take that red pill. And if you're over on X, smash that heart.
There we go. Make sure y'all are hitting the buttons. And of course, on Facebook, make sure y'all are hitting the buttons over there too. Also, like to say a shout out to everybody who's watching this show afterwards or just listening on the, I guess, whatever platform you happen to be listening on. We appreciate all of you. And yeah, I guess we're just going to go ahead and jump right in here. Hey, F. Glenn, what's going on, man?
Got Aaron in the house.
What's up, Aaron?
Got Chachi.
Hey, Chachi. And then people just started showing up. There's lots of chattering back and
I
forth in the
see
chats today.
that.
I'm
I
sure
see
Lightspear's
that.
over there on Pill. What's up, Lightspear? Hey, brother Bill, what's going on, man?
No, I don't see Lightspear yet.
You don't see Lightspear yet? Oh, man.
Not yet. There's Mike.
What's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
There's Wendy.
Hey, Wendy.
Hey, Aaron.
Awesome.
Let's see. Let me check again. Oh, yep. Lightspear.
Oh,
is there.
Lightspear is over there. What's up,
Yeah,
Lightspear?
just showed up.
Nice.
Had to check again. Always going back and forth.
Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Always something going on over there in
I
your neck of
know.
the woods
Ugh,
on the other
it
side of
is
all
what
of this
it is.
madness.
I know.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Whatever will be, will be.
There you go.
Yeah.
So who's ready for this thing tonight between
thing
Vance?
tonight.
Between a sane person and an insane person.
Insane in the membrane.
Oh, balls, man.
Oh, I know that dude. Yeah,
Yeah, it's good.
about 5 beers short of a 6-pack is what that dude is.
Yeah, I
Hey,
know.
Steph.
Hey, Steph.
How you doing? Thanks for
There's
joining.
Miss Jan.
Graham Jam. How you doing, Jan? Jan's ready. All right, we can get started now.
Okay. I think she was talking about the debate.
Oh yeah.
I
think we're all ready.
I
It's
think
gonna
Vance is gonna just mop him.
and I can't wait to hear what President Trump's commentary is about all of it as well. That'll probably be one of the best parts about it because I love hearing Trump's comments. And he'll just be kind of off the cuff. No teleprompter, no pre-formed speech, just Trump being Trump. It should be a good time tonight. I look forward to it. So yeah, make sure your cocktails and your popcorn are ready.
And your bingo card.
and your bingo cards.
Don't forget your bingo cards.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of hoping we hear horse essence tonight.
Ugh. That's so gross.
Probably not. I'm gonna say that one's not gonna be on the bingo card, but definitely if that one's on your bingo card, you're guaranteed a bingo if they say that.
Right. Right. Well, let's go ahead and get through some news while we're waiting because it doesn't start for a couple hours.
Yeah, it
so
doesn't start for a good couple hours.
Let's go ahead and start.
Let's go ahead and start it up.
Ready?
Hope y'all are ready. Here we go.
Can you read that real quick?
Can I? Yeah.
Don't.
Oh, you would like me to? Okay. The biggest reason for the strike is inflation generated by the Biden-Harris regime.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
I've also been talking to the members here on the ground, the individuals here that are now taking to the picket line. They tell me one of their top concerns, inflation that we have all been living under for the past 4 years. They say that their wages are not adequately keeping up with the cost of living increase and that they need these wage increases reflected in their next contract so they can just keep up and get.
Oh, wow. That was fast.
Just abrupt
Ending there.
thoughts.
Okay, so how many videos do we have about the strike? That's it? Okay, so there's been some conversations going on about this whole strike. I'm glad that the workers are doing the strike. I hope that, they are successful in their endeavors. But with the influx of illegal immigrants and the fact that those who own these companies just don't care about much of anything, I have a feeling that there's going to be a whole bunch of scabs that cross those picket lines. And it's probably going to be those who are maybe not necessarily of a legal status here in this nation. I know that it's happened with so many other jobs, and the wages just keep going down and down and down. It is absolutely miserable what we're looking at. I know that it's going to cause a whole lot of problems with imported goods. Maybe Americans will be able to get a whole bunch of, hey, Cindy Sue, thanks for joining. We're glad you made it too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Anyway, so the longshoremen, I pray that they're finding success, but I have concerns that they'll be replaced with lower paid, under abled employees. I mean, look at the way everything's done now. There is no care or effort put into anything. And why do these big corporations care when they can just pay, people nothing to
Half.
do half, not even do half of the job. Aaron says, so their contract ended this week and the ports were not supposed to automate, cutting jobs, and that's why they're striking. I understand that. I understand that they're trying to do automation because apparently a lot of the docks out there in Europe, there's a lot of automation over there. Getting rid of these jobs isn't a great idea, especially with robots. Robots are going to be one of our downfalls if we don't get that crap under control here real fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that once President Trump gets in office, even Elon Musk has talked against AI and all of this machine, everything. People need things to do. People need a job. It's like, it's good, a healthy thing to go in and go do something, put your effort into it, and, make something of value during your day. Because if you're not doing anything, it gets very miserable. Then it creates depression. But that's one of the problems that we have with our younger generation is everything is instant. Everything requires very little effort to get done for them. And then they end up being some of the most miserable people on the planet, which is very sad because we've gone out of our way to give our kids and grandkids absolutely everything. But whenever they run into any kind of a challenge, sometimes they have a tendency to crumble a little bit. So we need, look, anyways, we need jobs, and we need good jobs like working at the docks. It's good, and we need to protect those jobs.
I know. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and read that.
Ghana.
No.
Which candidate really supports women's rights?
Boy, you're pushing.
I know, I'm pushing. I'm done pushing now. It's only Tuesday.
I'm sorry. I am so tired of the tens of thousands of just hard fours online being like, I'm voting for her because he's going to strip all of our rights away as a woman. I can't do that as a mom and a da. What rights, babe? What rights? He was already president. And how many rights did you lose? 0. He's trying to protect women's rights. What do you think it is when we have men in women's sports? We have men in our personal spaces. What do you think it is when dangerous men come over the border? That's what protecting women and children is. Oh, he already said he's not going to do a nationwide abortion ban. He's not going to do it. If anything, it's going to be state by state the way it has been. And guess what? If a state, 90% of people in a state want something, I think that state should have it, even if I don't agree with it. If you don't like it, move to another state. It's very simple. Stop with the propaganda. This is why people make fun of women. Use your brain. Use your brain, babe.
Thoughts?
I think that it's a good thing that women are speaking up about the fact that women's rights movements have gotten way out of control. I mean, women have been speaking up for a while now, but I think it's becoming a much more common thing because women recognize that it's not in their best interest to have all of these, crappy, rules and regulations to protect and coddle and all this other stuff. I mean, people that have a brain can see that these policies, procedures are not for anybody's benefit, except for those who want to take advantage of systems that aren't going to do things in their best interest in the end. We've gotten to ourselves into such a mess. We've gotten ourselves into such a mess, and it's going to require all of us to stand up and speak counter to the narratives that we've gotten very, very used to for, pretty much our entire lives.
I know.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Ugh. You ready?
Yeah.
Go ahead and read that, please.
Jack Posobiec and Tucker Carlson agree that we're in a spiritual war.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
We're on the tour, but there's been an interesting through line undercurrent theme that I've noticed on your tour as you've been going through these events. Are we in a spiritual war?
Well, I mean, let me just say I am the least qualified person to speak on this or any other spiritual topic, in that my flaws are really obvious. They're certainly obvious to me, and I have no grounding at all in theology or religion or anything. So I really shouldn't even be talking about this. It's just that it's so obvious to me that the motives we ascribe to people are not the whole story, and that people are being acted on by forces outside of nature, which we call above nature, supernatural. And I don't think any honest person can deny that. I don't think you need to be a Christian, which I am, by the way. But to see that, I think you just need to apply logic and empiricism and just look around, what is that? Why are they doing that? Why are they worshiping violence? Even when it doesn't help them, killing for its own sake. What is that? And that's not a natural human impulse. Animals don't worship violence. They use violence as a means to achieve what they want, like eating, but they don't do it for its own sake. And our leaders do it for its own sake. They hurt people for the thrill of hurting people. Again, that's not a natural instinct. It's a supernatural instinct, and it's evil. And we see it all around us. So yes, of course, this is a spiritual war. Obviously, it's not a crackpot thing to say. It's the opposite. It's the obvious conclusion. And what's wild to me is that we're so dulled, we're so trained to ignore the obvious and to suppress our own instincts that it's it sounds crazy to the modern Western ear, but yeah, it's clear.
Thoughts, sir?
Tucker seems to be very uncomfortable about talking about spiritual kind of stuff. I think he's wants to remain very private about all of that.
I think that's his private.
Yeah,
thing.
he doesn't. But then again, Tucker being very aware of what's going on in the world around him, he recognizes how much talking about God can get you canceled in a half a second. And I can see why that would be a concern for somebody who has spent his life in the public eye. Uh-oh, what happened?
Your computer or your thingy just
everything just crapped out. That's really weird.
Just refresh. Just keep talking.
All right. So let me refresh. Anyways, yes, reload. Thank you. Anyway, So Tucker, I can understand why he would want to keep a lot of those opinions pretty quiet. I can understand why he would want to not lose anything. But at this point in time, especially since he recognizes that it seems that there is some kind of a spiritual warfare going on, that he would want to be more open and upfront about it. But the fact that he was merely talking about it says that he was, he's not going to completely shy away from it. But the question being asked to Tucker Carlson is actually a very big deal in my mind because it is making that a normal part of the conversation. Are we in a spiritual war? Is there dark? Is there light? Is there good? Is there bad? Is that what's going on in the world around us? That conversation hasn't been had in a very, very long time. And it's becoming becoming much more common than it has been over just the past couple of years. That like it's really started to change in the past couple of years. So I'm going to say that the fact that that conversation is being had with large, I guess, star quality kind of names, I'm going to say that that's an indicator that the tides are turning because people are able to talk about it. Hey, Bethany Ann. Bethany says, as influential as he is, I feel he's careful since he's helping wake up so many. And I think that that's an excellent point, Bethany. I really do.
Aaron's got a point.
Aaron does have a point. Just Agent Smith cutting the feed before he raids you for the crime of free thought. Yeah, I don't know if that one's going to happen, but yeah, shout out to Agent Smith. Haven't said anything in a while. And thank you for getting those shenanigans over with before the vice presidential debate.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Go eat a brownie.
Yeah, have something. A happy brownie.
A happy brownie.
Makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes you feel so much better. Just saying.
Just saying. Just throwing that one out there.
Heard from a friend.
Yeah.
A friend told me. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You want to read that?
Carrie Lake turns the table on CNN reporter.
Ready?
Yes.
Do we
Try
have
not
any
to,
questions
Wendy.
over here? Your name and who you're with?
Darcy with CNN.
Did you say Veronica CNN?
Yes.
Do you think a 20-minute visit by Kamala Harris was enough at the border? 20 minutes? I mean, that's almost longer than CNN Plus was around, just a little bit. Do you think 20 minutes was appropriate for Kamala Harris to spend at the border?
I'm going to withhold my opinion on that.
Well, okay. You know it's not enough to cover the border because if any of you went to the border and you have been there, I know, that's not enough to even get information.
Thoughts?
I'm glad that she pointed that out. I don't know if it's going to change anybody's mind. Oh, hold on. Wendy told me to shh.
He can't right now.
Anyway, Carrie Lake, I would not want to have to fight that battle that she's fighting there, trying to communicate important information to the mainstream media. But with that being said, she knows that information gets out through all sorts of channels, and she's been using that. That's great. But the battle still needs to be fought in the mainstream media's, I guess, domain, for lack of a better phrase. And she's doing the best she can.
I mean, that's all she can do. You know, and I get where you're coming from, Aaron. Aaron says he was disappointed in her when she decided to run for Senate after she was cheated out of the Arizona governorship by that filthy cartel Hobbit Hobbs in 2022. But you know what? At least she's still fighting.
But
And
she is still
so-
fighting. And sometimes you have to know when to redirect, when you can, I mean, just out of a sheer strategic move, making sure that the people know who you are, going to a place where you know you can win, and then have some kind of effect on what happens in the future might be the better play for that. So I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of discussions, a lot of how do we proceed. We know that the election was stolen. But I mean, look at how far we've gotten at this point in time, where a lot of people believe that the election was stolen. A lot of people have seen the evidence that the election was stolen, but we still can't have our voices heard. We still can't get a redress for those grievances. So in the meantime, you have to continue to fight the fight, and that's the best way she knows how.
Absolutely. You're right, Wendy. It would make people question
Yeah.
what's happening.
Especially watching the replay. Especially.
Hey,
Jenny!
Miss Jenny, watch out for the frogs, Jenny.
Watch out for the frogs, Jenny.
Yeah.
If she will give up on the censorship, she won. I have no faith in her for any other position. Governorship, not censorship. Okay. Yeah. Well, look, I hear you, but sometimes discretion is the better part of valor.
There you go. You ready?
Yeah.
Living in isolation is a normal growth process with God, but we're not supposed to stay there. This is not where you're supposed to live at, is in isolation. So you have a job to do. You have a purpose. Your purpose is to advance the kingdom of God. Your gifts and your talents is a point of access to your purpose. See, a lot of times churches are teaching you about heaven. They'll teach you from salvation to destination, and they'll stay right there. But Jesus taught, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus was teaching us how to usher in the environment of heaven here on this earth. And let's go all the way back to the creation of man, of Adam. So Adam's job was to have dominion over this earth and usher in the kingdom of God here on this earth. Well, Adam lost that. Well, because of the finished work of Jesus, death, burial, and resurrection, he gave us the ability to pick up where Adam left off. And see, that's your job now. Your job is to go out and create the environment of heaven, to change the atmosphere in everything you touch, whether it's in your job, whether you're self-employed in a business, whether it's in government, whether it's in politics, whether it's in the legal system, everything and everywhere you go, your purpose is to change that environment. And how you do that is incorporating your gifts and your talents. Now, I believe a lot of times we forget the very faith in Jesus that gave you access to the kingdom is the very faith you're going to have to operate in to access your purpose and to access your fulfillment and to access the plan that God has for your life.
Thoughts, sir?
So get out of isolation. But that's something I actually, believe it or not, really need to do better. And going to these schools has certainly helped out, because I did put myself into isolation for the longest time as I was trying to rewire everything. I recognized that I had a lot of things that, a lot of anger, a lot of healing that needed to happen. And so I had to go into isolation so that way I could, proverbially, there it is. Proverbially,
Words are hard.
I know, right? Lick the wounds and, heal myself as best as I can, obviously with his help. And so getting back out into society, it can be a bit of a challenge, but we recognize, or at least I recognize, that I have no choice and that I'm not going to grow being stuck in my little isolation bubble. And then what do we do when we get out of that isolation bubble? Well, we have to go create the environment of heaven, just like he said. And creating that environment of heaven is by doing the things that we're good at and making sure that, we're doing it to the best of our ability. We're acting as the example. We're there for people when they need help. We do the Christian kinds of things. We show people that there is a way that is better through our actions. And that's how it's supposed to be. But we can't show anybody anything if we're isolated in our own little world, because then who's going to see the works that you do? So yeah, we got to get out there and make sure that we're, walking the walk. Aaron says that he is somewhat isolated, but I do work a lot. And let's be honest, most people suck. And that's why they need us. They need us because they don't know any better. And it's also for our own growth, because there's no value in life in just being kind of isolated like a hermit. Is there a season to be a hermit? Most certainly. But we should get out there and try to interact with people. That is part of our mental health that we need to work on. And that is interacting with other human beings.
I have to.
There's
agree.
8 billion people on this planet, right? So, I mean, there's got to be some people out there that we can hang out with.
I have to agree with Aaron. Most people suck.
They can.
Like I had to take Santino to school. Then I had to come home, do paperwork for the doctor, go to the doctor. I was there for what seemed like 47 days. And then go get Santino, come home. And after just being out and around people, I'm just exhausted and I'm over today. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So, Christian got us 2 videos, part
Nice.
1 and part 2. Julian Assange. Are you ready?
All right. Yep.
Oh, see, Carol's at work. She's almost done. Well,
Carol.
we're going to be doing a watch party, so stick around
Or stop by when you can.
or stop by when you can.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yes.
Of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, ladies and gentlemen. The transition from years of confinement in a maximum security prison to being here before the representatives of 46 nations and 700 million people is a profound and a surreal shift. The experience of isolation for years in a small cell is difficult to convey. It strips away one's sense of self, leaving only the raw essence of existence. I am yet not fully equipped to speak about what I have endured, the relentless struggle to stay alive, both physically and mentally, nor can I speak yet about the deaths by hanging, murder, and medical neglect of my fellow prisoners. I apologize in advance if my words falter or if my presentation lacks the polish you might expect from such a distinguished forum. Isolation has taken its toll, which I am trying to unwind, and expressing myself in this setting is a challenge. However, the gravity of this occasion and the weight of the issues at hand compel me to set aside my reservations and speak to you directly. I have traveled a long way, literally and figuratively, to be before you today. Before our discussion or answering any questions you might have, I wish to thank PACE for its 2020 resolution, which stated that my imprisonment set a dangerous precedent for journalists and noted that the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture called for my release. I'm also grateful for PACE's 2021 statement, expressing concern over credible reports that US officials discussed my assassination, again calling for my prompt release. And I commend the Legal Affairs and Human Rights Committee for commissioning a renowned rapporteur, Suna Iversdottir, to investigate the circumstances surrounding my detention and conviction and the consequent implications for human rights. However, like so many of the efforts made in my case, whether they were from parliamentarians, presidents, prime ministers, the Pope, UN officials and diplomats, unions, legal and medical professionals, academics, activists, or citizens, none of them should have been necessary. None of the statements, resolutions, reports, films, articles, events, fundraisers, protests, and letters over the last 14 years should have been necessary. But all of them were necessary because without them, I never would have seen the light of day. This unprecedented global effort was needed because the legal protections that did exist, many existed only on paper, were not effective in any remotely reasonable time. I eventually chose freedom over unrealizable justice after being detained for years and facing a 175-year sentence with no effective remedy. Justice, for me, is now precluded as the US government insisted in writing into its plea agreement that I cannot file a case at the European Court of Human Rights or even a Freedom of Information Act request over what it did to me as a result of its extradition request. I want to be totally clear. I am not free today because the system worked. I am free today after years of incarceration because I pled guilty to journalism. I pled guilty to seeking information from a source. I pled guilty to obtaining information from a source. And I pled guilty to informing the public what that information was. I did not plead guilty to anything else. I hope my testimony today can serve to highlight the weaknesses of the existing safeguards and to help those whose cases are less visible but who are equally vulnerable. As I emerge from the dungeon of Belmarsh, the truth now seems less discernible, and I regret how much ground has been lost during that time period, how expressing the truth has been undermined, attacked, weakened, and diminished. I see more impunity, more secrecy, more retaliation for telling the truth, and more self-censorship. It is hard not to draw a line from the US government's prosecution of me, its crossing the Rubicon by internationally criminalizing journalism, to the chilled climate for freedom of expression that exists now. When I founded WikiLeaks, it was driven by a simple dream: to educate people about how the world works so that, through understanding, we might bring about something better. Having a map of where we are lets us understand where we might go. Knowledge empowers us to hold power to account and to demand justice where there is none. We obtained and published truths about tens of thousands of hidden casualties of war and other unseen horrors, about programs of assassination, rendition, torture, and mass surveillance. We revealed not just when and where these things happened, but frequently the policies, the agreements, and the structures behind them. When we published Collateral Murder, the infamous gun camera footage of a US Apache helicopter crew eagerly blowing to pieces Iraqi journalists and their rescuers, the visual reality of modern warfare shocked the world. But we also used interest in this video to direct people to the classified policies for when the US military could deploy lethal force in Iraq, how many civilians could be killed before gaining higher approval. In fact, 40 years of my potential 175-year sentence was for obtaining and releasing those policies. The practical political vision I was left with after being immersed in the world's dirty wars and secret operations is simple. Let us stop gagging, torturing, and killing each other for a change. Get these fundamentals right, and other political, economic, and scientific processes will have space to take care of the rest. WikiLeaks' work was deeply rooted in the principles that this assembly stands for. Our journalism elevated freedom of information and the public's right to know. It found its natural operational home in Europe. I lived in Paris, and we had formal corporate registrations in France and in Iceland. Our journalistic and technical staff were spread throughout Europe. We published to the world from servers based in France, in Germany, and in Norway. But 14 years ago, the United States military arrested one of our alleged whistleblowers, Private First Class Manning, a US intelligence analyst based in Iraq. The US government concurrently launched an investigation against me and my colleagues. The US government illicitly sent planes of agents to Iceland, paid bribes to an informant to steal our legal and journalistic work product, and without formal process, pressured banks and financial services to block our subscriptions and to freeze our accounts. The UK government took part in some of this retribution. It admitted at the European Court of Human Rights that it had unlawfully spied on my UK lawyers during this time. Ultimately, this harassment was legally groundless. President Obama's Justice Department chose not to indict me, recognizing that no crime had been committed. The United States had never before prosecuted a publisher for publishing or obtaining government information.
All right, part two. You ready?
Wow. Do you want to put that up from Jan real quick? You know, the port may be shutting down due to the trafficking going on through them. Just a thought.
There you go.
And you know what? The ports were shut down before on the West Coast. And that now that everything's coming out about P. Diddy and the connections to everything in New York, you know what? Maybe that might make some sense. They probably gave him a false sense of security that it was only the West Coast that was shut down. But the East Coast felt that they were good, but also gave them a false sense of confidence and made it easier to catch those. If that's the case, then that would make a lot of sense, because we know that there is a lot of trafficking, human trafficking, that goes on through the ports. So, yeah.
And yes, we have heard that Doc is okay, Renee. We have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have heard that Doc is okay.
Yep. So, are you ready for part dos?
Yes.
Okay. And Christian's so amazing.
Yeah.
Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny and Christian.
Yeah,
y'all are
thank you.
amazing. Y'all are really amazing.
Yep. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
For publishing or obtaining government information. To do so would require a radical and ominous reinterpretation of the US Constitution. In January 2017, Obama also commuted the sentence of Manning, who had been convicted of being one of my sources. However, in February 2017, the landscape changed dramatically. President Trump had been elected. He appointed two wolves in MAGA hats, Mike Pompeo, a Kansas congressman and former arms industry executive, as CIA director, and William Barr, a former CIA officer, as US Attorney General. By March 2017, WikiLeaks had exposed the CIA's infiltration of French political parties, its spying on French and German leaders, its spying on the European Central Bank, European Economics Ministries, and its standing orders to spy on French industry as a whole. We revealed the CIA's vast production of malware and viruses, its subversion of supply chains, its subversion of antivirus software, cars, smart TVs, and iPhones. CIA Director Pompeo launched a campaign of retribution. It is now a matter of public record that under Pompeo's explicit direction, the CIA drew up plans to kidnap and to assassinate me within the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and authorized going after my European colleagues, subjecting us to theft, hacking attacks, and the planting of false information. My wife and my infant son were also targeted. A CIA asset was permanently assigned to track my wife, and instructions were given to obtain DNA from my 6-month-old son's nappy. This is the testimony of more than 30 current and former US intelligence officials speaking to the US press, which has been additionally corroborated by records seized in a prosecution brought against some of the CIA agents involved. The CIA's targeting of myself, my family, and my associates through aggressive extrajudicial and extraterritorial means provides a rare insight into how powerful intelligence organizations engage in transnational repression. Such repressions are not unique. What is unique is that we know so much about this one due to numerous whistleblowers and to judicial investigations in Spain. This assembly is no stranger to extraterritorial abuses by the CIA. Pace's groundbreaking report on CIA renditions in Europe exposed how the CIA operated secret detention centers and conducted unlawful renditions on European soil, violating human rights and international law. In February this year, the alleged source of some of our CIA revelations, former CIA officer Joshua Schulte, was sentenced to 40 years in prison under conditions of extreme isolation. His windows are blacked out, and a white noise machine plays 24 hours a day over his door so that he cannot even shout through it. These conditions are more severe than those found in Guantanamo Bay. But transnational repression is also conducted by abusing legal processes. The lack of effective safeguards against this means that Europe is vulnerable to having its mutual legal assistance and extradition treaties hijacked by foreign powers to go after dissenting voices in Europe. In Michael Pompeo's memoirs, which I read in my prison cell, the former CIA director bragged about how he pressured the US Attorney General to bring an extradition case against me in response to our publications about the CIA. Indeed, acceding to Pompeo's requests, the US Attorney General reopened the investigation against me that Obama had closed and rearrested Manning, this time as a witness. Manning was held in a prison for over a year, fined $1,000 a day in a formal attempt to coerce her into providing secret testimony against me. She ended up attempting to take her own life. We usually think of attempts to force journalists to testify against their sources. But Manning was now a source being forced to testify against their journalist. By December 2017, CIA Director Pompeo had got his way, and the US government issued a warrant to the UK for my extradition. The UK government kept the warrant secret from the public for 2 more years, while it, the US government, and the new president of Ecuador moved to shape the political, the legal, and the diplomatic grounds for my arrest. When powerful nations feel entitled to target individuals beyond their borders, those individuals do not stand a chance unless there are strong safeguards in place and a state willing to enforce them. Without this, no individual has a hope of defending themselves against the vast resources that a state aggressor can deploy. If the situation were not already bad enough in my case, the US government asserted a dangerous new global legal position. Only US citizens have free speech rights. Europeans and other nationalities do not have free speech rights. But the US claims its Espionage Act still applies to them regardless of where they are. So Europeans in Europe must obey US secrecy law with no defenses at all as far as the US government is concerned. An American in Paris can talk about what the US government is up to, perhaps. But for a Frenchman in Paris, to do so is a crime with no defense, and he may be extradited just like me. Now that one foreign government has formally asserted that Europeans have no free speech rights, a dangerous precedent has been set. Other powerful states will inevitably follow suit. The war in Ukraine has already seen the criminalization of journalists in Russia. But based on the precedent set in my extradition, there is nothing to stop Russia, or indeed any other state, from targeting European journalists, publishers, or even social media users by claiming that their domestic secrecy laws have been violated. The rights of journalists and publishers within the European space are seriously threatened. Transnational repression cannot become the norm here. As one of the world's two great norm-setting institutions, PACE must act. The criminalization of news-gathering activities is a threat to investigative journalism everywhere. I was formally convicted by a foreign power for asking for, receiving, and publishing truthful information about that power while I was in Europe. The fundamental issue is simple. Journalists should not be prosecuted for doing their jobs. Journalism is not a crime. It is a pillar of a free and informed society. Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates, if Europe is to have a future where the freedom to speak and the freedom to publish the truth are not privileges enjoyed by a few, but rights guaranteed to all, then it must act so that what has happened in my case never happens to anyone else. I wish to express my deepest gratitude to this Assembly, to the Conservatives, Social Democrats, Liberals, Leftists, Greens, and Independents who have supported me throughout this ordeal, and to the countless individuals who have advocated tirelessly for my release. It is heartening to know that in a world often divided by ideology and interests, there remains a shared commitment to the protection of essential human liberties. Freedom of expression and all that flows from it is at a dark crossroad. I fear that unless institutions like PACE wake up to the gravity of the situation, it will be too late. Let us all commit to doing our part to ensure that the light of freedom never dims, that the pursuit of truth will live on, and that the voices of the many are not silenced by the interests of the few.
All right, sir, thoughts?
God, it gives me such a heavy heart, the whole Julian Assange thing. Like it's just, I feel I can't even describe it. It just feels confining for me in terms of what he had to go through for 14 years.
Yes.
14 years. Think about how long 14 years is. That's awful.
Mhm.
And like he said, for the crime of journalism. Really,
Yes.
truly, that's what it was. The crime of journalism. I know that he's not an American citizen, and that they tried to spin it a million ways from Sunday. But freedom of speech is freedom of speech. Lord knows that all the countries that hate us have freedom of speech about how awful and about how bad everything is in this nation. So why not somebody who actually cares about the American experiment, whether they're a citizen or not? We shouldn't have anything to say about freedom of speech other than the fact that we support it. We understand that freedom of speech means that it might include speech that you don't like. That's fine. But silencing somebody who's putting real information out and bringing the receipts, i.e., real journalism, we should support that 100%. And I'd like to think that it couldn't have gotten this bad, but it most certainly did, obviously. Look at the crimes that they committed against Julian Assange and everybody who was trying to put the truth out there. And some of the torture techniques that they used. Put a white noise machine outside of somebody's door so that way nobody could hear him screaming.
That's crazy.
And then that's just a tiny part of it. He said that he hasn't even, I don't know why he said he can't speak on it. He doesn't feel like, he almost was making it sound like he's not qualified to speak on his own life experience, but that's also an indicator of how he was treated and the psychological operation and the psychological campaign against him that was going on for those past years, that he's been like kept in a little cage, even when he wasn't in jail and when he was in the embassies. He was still trapped in there. And so he'll never be the same again. He'll never be Julian Assange that he knew or his family knew. They've got a long road ahead of them.
Oh, absolutely.
So definitely keep Assange in your prayers. Aaron says they can't give Assange enough money for what he went through. I agree. And money won't do anything in comparison.
No, he can't get that time back.
No. How much did he miss out on his family's life while he was gone?
His child was 6 months old. That child is almost 15 now.
Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't know his own child.
And his own child doesn't know him.
Yeah.
Except for what was said on the TV and what the other kids said, to the child at school. Because, kids are going to,
Yeah, I know.
repeat talking points from their parents who watch television. Oh, my daddy said, meh, meh, meh. Oh, shut up. Anyway, he said that this was about teaching people how the world works, how it really works. How does this world really work? That's something we didn't know. It's something we didn't understand. But it's something we certainly have found out about because of people like Julian Assange. The sacrifice of his sanity as how he knew it before was not in vain because of the amount of people that he's woken up. I think that sacrifice is truly something to be appreciated and admired. And I am in awe of that man's resilience.
Yes.
He's more resilient than he believes he is.
I agree.
Aaron says, in my humble opinion, Assange is one of the greatest people humanity has produced in the last 100 years. Certainly one of the top 10.
Yeah.
I've talked about it before. Once this is all said and done, we need to build statues of some people. He's going to be one of them.
I agree.
He deserves that. He deserves that. And our posterity needs to know who the hell Julian Assange was.
Exactly.
Before they try to rip it down the next time they feel a little froggy about the whole thing.
Yeah, we seem to have a problem with ripping down statues around here.
Yeah. So it was brought up about Mike Pompeo. And so I'm going to bring up the Q drop number 950. That was done March 15th, 2018.
I agree, Bethany. His life was stolen for 14 years. There is no payment that will bring back that time for him. None.
Okay.
None.
Pompeo is Trump's guy. as head of CIA, gather intelligence on all the shady CIA shit we've done, both here and overseas. Moves to State Department to use that intel to help free the world from the CIA BS. And then trust Kansas, Q. So that's why. That's what's
Yeah, I
going on.
know.
That's what happened. And so if Pompeo
Hey,
looked,
Dad.
hey, Dad. So if Pompeo looked like he was not working or was kind of a plant, then it must have been by design.
Mm.
Pompeo, in order to gain trust, remember he was CIA, so keep in mind the people and what kind of mentality is going to go on in that kind of a world where it's all, you know, shadow games and stuff like that. And so a shadow game has to be played. So if Pompeo looked dirty, doesn't necessarily mean he was dirty. Means that he could have been gathering intel. So that way it could be over with.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about him yet.
I don't know how I feel about him either, but I do feel that, you know, maybe in the end we'll find out that he was a good guy after all.
I hope so.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I know we say that a lot. We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
That's all you can do.
Yeah, I know.
Because I'm sure Q says people that you think are good are bad, and people that you think are bad are good.
Mm-hmm. Jan says, I wonder what earrings Tim will be wearing tonight. Just a thought.
I know.
Yeah, the microphone ones. I don't know. They might be going in there pretty cocky, thinking that Walls is he's going to go in all puffed up, kind of, you know, walking like he's some kind of world wrestling superstar or something, and try to pump up the crowd in the weird way that he does, like he's some kind of what is it, Wish.com, Jerry Springer, not Jerry Springer, but who was it?
Who?
He used to pump the fist.
Oh, Arsenio Hall.
Arsenio Halls, yeah, like a Wish.com Arsenio Hall or something like that. And I think he's going to make an ass of himself tonight. And I
hope
think,
so.
well, and then with the information that came out about him and his connection to the CCP now,
Yeah.
you know, I think that it's going to be interesting, and there's going to be a lot of overcompensation for who Walls really is.
Renee thinks it's going to be pearls.
Pearls.
Pearls for sure.
He wore a pearl necklace.
Uh.
A horse pearl necklace.
Oh gosh. Are you ready?
Yeah, I am. Please, let's move on.
Read that, please.
Make it viral. 218,000 illegal alien voters will still be allowed to vote in Arizona. There you go, Aaron.
Ready?
Yes.
Now, this new data set, as they're calling it, brings the total number of people impacted to 218,000 instead of the 98,000 we first reported. These people were mistakenly marked as having provided documentary proof of citizenship. And Arizona voter registration database now has correctly flagged the impacted individuals. Election officials say they will contact the affected Arizonans with information regarding their status after the general election. That means for now, the Arizona Supreme Court's ruling is going to stay that impacted voters, that includes all of them, will still be able to vote.
Thoughts, sir.
Still be able to vote. I wouldn't say that your county is null and void, Aaron. I think that it all adds
Go
up in the
vote,
end.
Aaron.
Yeah, you got to vote, man. Look, you may think that your county is null and void because it doesn't match anywhere near what is in Maricopa County, but all the other counties put together with a solid showing in Maricopa County can certainly turn the tide for what's going on in Arizona. That's why everybody's got to go vote. Whether or not you think your vote counts doesn't matter. Go make them hear your vote. Now, we see that 218,000, was that it?
Yes, sir.
And they say go vote anyways. Go vote anyways. They're going to make it seem like your vote's not going to count, just like articles like this. Keep in mind, there might be like a operation going on to catch those who are voting illegally.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure there's going to be cameras there. They're going to see who did what. It's a big sting operation.
Exactly.
They're trying to catch these people doing dumb things. So that way, when Trump gets back into office, we can go ahead and take care of the problems that have been there. And for those that are trying to say, oh, I was good the whole time I was here, please give me amnesty, blah, blah, blah. Then why did you go vote in an election for a election that only was for citizens? I'm sorry. You must go somewhere else. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Exactly. Aaron says, I will vote until the freedoms seeds start
Flying. Yeah.
even if it makes me sick to participate in the broken ass system.
Your participation in the system is not an acknowledgement or approval of the brokenness of the system. It is your vote to say that you want the system to work properly. Hence the voting for Trump.
Mhm.
We got to do our part. You may have to hold your nose because you don't like it. I get it. Trust me. I have had difficulty wanting to vote myself. I know exactly where you're coming from. As a matter of fact, I kind of missed the last two. And that's, well, because we were moving a whole bunch of other things and we didn't want to get people thinking that we're trying to vote in 2 different states and stuff like that, because I know that these shady ass people would say, oh, you voted, but we didn't. So neither
Even
here nor there.
double-checked.
Yeah, even double checked. And we were making sure that we didn't vote as well. Had to check to make sure we didn't vote. How sad is that? But this time we're staying put. We're registered. We're ready to go, and we're going to vote. You know, it's our responsibility.
Yeah.
Aaron says, cool, then I won't have to waste the freedom seeds if it's a big sting. I like to be prepared in case it isn't. I know that that's a lot of people's concerns, but I really do feel like the military will step in right away. And I do believe that it's going to get hairy, but I believe that everything will be okay. And it's not going to be as bad as a lot of people fear that it may be. That, and really, honestly, we shouldn't fear.
No, we shouldn't. It says 365 times in the Bible, thou shalt not fear.
Exactly. Brother Bill says, DJT said, if you vote illegally, you're going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Yeah,
There you go.
exactly.
You ready?
Yep.
Read that, please.
Crooked Hillary conveniently predicts an October surprise.
Ready?
Yes.
You mean Teresa Barnett, but hey, let's go.
It really doesn't
You
look like
liken
Hillary.
yourself to Cassandra.
Exactly. I mean, it's
You liken yourself to
Teresa Barnett.
Yes.
You liken yourself to Cassandra, the Greek mythological figure who could see the future and the prophecies, but was never believed. Putting that Cassandra hat on for the moment, but we're listening. What is something you see happening in the near future that we should be taking more seriously?
Well, I do think that the press needs a consistent, the press that's not supporting Trump blatantly, very persistently, the press that's trying to be the press, be objective, be, reporting the facts. The press needs a consistent narrative about the danger that Trump poses. Because people may still look at the danger and say, I don't care, it doesn't affect me, I'm going to vote for him for X, Y, or Z. But okay, but at least people need to be woken up and given the facts about what he has done, is saying, and would do. And I anticipate that something will happen in October, as it always does. The Russians, as I said earlier, are very active in this election. We know the Iranians are active as well. Chinese uses TikTok, or they certainly did against Biden and for Trump. I think they're a little less pro Trump right now. So you look at where people get their information, and they get their information largely from social media. And so the campaign is doing the best job it can to combat that. Combat both domestic and foreign false disinformation. But I anticipate there will be a full court press in October. The digital airwaves will be filled. And why does that matter? Because the press that is pro-Trump anyway oftentimes stories are put on digitally that then are picked up by, let's say, at Fox and others. And then those stories are stories, so the mainstream press reports on them. And so that story then takes on a life of its own. There will be concerted efforts to distort and pervert Kamala Harris, who she is, what she stands for, what she's done. I mean, look, the crazy story about me running a child trafficking operation out of a basement of a pizzeria, don't laugh. Don't laugh. It was a huge story. And it got one young man in North Carolina to get in his car with his, assault rifle and drive up to liberate these non-existent children and shoot up a pizzeria in Washington, D.C. This is dangerous stuff. It starts online, often on the dark web. It migrates. It's picked up by the pro-Trump media. It's then reported on by everybody else, which makes sure it has about 100% coverage. And people believe it. So I don't know what it's going to be, but it will be something, and we'll have to work very, very hard to make sure that it is exposed as the lie that it is.
Thoughts?
I hear a lot of doublespeak in there.
Okay, go ahead.
Because she says it'll be exposed for the lie that it is. Talking about her lie. And that didn't look like Hillary. It really did look much more like Teresa Barnwell.
Mm-hmm.
The cankles weren't cankly enough.
I know.
It just like the shape is different. It wasn't looking like Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like her. Great job. So full of knowledge. Like how you are doing and saying now to get people to go after Trump. It's see, the thing is if they didn't want people talking about something like Frazzle Drip, then why would she keep bringing it up?
Exactly.
I think that's, again, a predictive programming kind of move to keep it in people's minds that these things are out there. And when the truth comes out, it'll be like, oh, shit, she was talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I've heard about this. And it makes it a little bit easier once you recognize that these people are a bunch of liars and that these are the things they're actually doing. Aaron says they always accuse others of what they do. That's exactly what they do. It's called gaslighting, and they're very effective at it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's telling us how they hide it. Yes, it's exactly what they're doing. If you listen, it's kind of funny because the doublespeak is there. They're actually telling you straight up. It's just that they use doublespeak and make it sound like they're saying something very different. But no, they're straight up telling the truth.
Yep.
Right there in front of everybody. She wasn't wearing her potato sack. No, she wasn't wearing.
Christian in the house.
Hey, Christian, what's going on? Thanks for joining, man. You guys are missing the best part of that Hillary interview.
Well, do tell, Christian.
Yeah,
do tell.
Do tell, sir. Do tell.
Bethany says, proud of her for exposing herself yet again.
Yet again. And she is. She used it for her last adrenochrome delivery.
Yeah.
You couldn't pay me to don the HRC mask. What if it got stuck on there by some nefarious twist or another? Plus, I'd be scared to look in the mirror because that kind of ugly kills. Oh, God. Yeah, I hear you.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully Christian will enlighten us, but
Yeah.
he's probably at work.
Yeah, he probably is at work.
We're so glad you're here, Christian.
Yeah, glad you're here, man.
Can't wait to have you back on, sir. You ready?
Yes.
You want to read that?
3 things Trump must do to win.
Trump voters must.
Oh, Trump voters must do to win. There we
Ready?
go. Yes, now I am. Are we?
I don't know. Agent Smith's being dumb.
Come on now. Hit the play button again. There we go.
The election is right around the corner. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to make sure this election isn't stolen like the 2020 election? Are you going to get out and vote? Obviously, you are, because if you're watching this, you're not one of those to sit back and just, oh, I hope other people go out and vote. I'm just going to go on X and post memes. That's not enough. You have to get out and vote. You have to get your friends, your family, anybody that you know who's going to back Donald Trump and the down ballot races, especially local. You need to get them out to vote. But that's not enough. I mean, we can go for too big to rig. That's great. And like I said, I've said many times, I do believe that if it were a free and fair election, that this would be, if only legal votes were counted, only legal ballots were counted, then Donald Trump would win in a landslide. We know they're going to cheat. So making it too big to rig means we have to win by a huge margin. But even if we do, that's not quite enough, because all they have to do is, in the swing states, all they have to do is to steal a certain number of votes, whether that's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. They can and almost certainly will try to do that. So we have to do more than just getting out the vote. We have to do what we can to fight the voter fraud, the rampant, widespread voter fraud that's going to take place before, during, and after the election, especially if you're in Pennsylvania. And to do that, it's up to you. You need to call your local GOP office, your county GOP office, your state GOP office, whichever office you like, all of them if you can, and say, hey, what can I do? How can I help? How can I volunteer to make sure that this election isn't stolen? And if they act dumbfounded, hang up the phone, because they're obviously, and get rid of them. Vote them out if you can. Move on to the next one. Between the local, state, and county GOP offices, you should be able to find somebody who's got a plan in place. Find them and work with them. Ask them what you can do to help. And the last but not least, we have to fight the propaganda. They're trying to suspend disbelief in the idea that Kamala Harris can win. She can't win on her own. But if they are able to steal the election, it doesn't matter what the votes are. It doesn't matter what the ballots are. She's able to steal it. The mainstream media's job, big tech's job, is to make it to where you don't think that it was stolen. Or more importantly, the masses don't think that it was stolen. They're trying to convince you that she's close. She's not. She's getting her butt whooped right now. Chances are she will be getting her butt whooped legally on election day.
All right. So she's definitely going to get her butt whipped come November. Getting out to vote is the most important thing. One of the biggest tactics that they have is trying to convince people that they don't need to show up, when in all actuality, that's exactly what we need, is everybody to show up. We need people to get out there and vote. We need people to make sure that they're not paying attention to the propaganda that's put out there to dishearten the voting base. We need to make sure that people recognize the truth, that it's going to, I already put the video up if that's what you were looking for, or not the video, but the comment. Anyways, these are, we have to harden our minds against the psychological operation that's been set against us through like the big tech and all of these other things. They're going to continue to try to silence, but we've already found so many ways with which to continue to try to communicate. We go out, we talk to people face to face. That's probably even more effective when we're face to face with somebody and they can see, and then we can share the information that we have on our phone. These are the things that make sure that other people are going with an honest view of what's really happening. They are being armed with the truth. And the more people are armed with the truth, the more likely they are to go out and make sure that their voice is heard. Can we volunteer? We can always volunteer. If you want to help with your local Republican Party or one of the other PACs or whatever it is, whatever you are inspired to do, go do that and make sure. I know that Jan, she's a poll watcher. There's all these options. I think it's probably a little late to do the poll watching thing if you were to start out now. But it's like, go be active. And if you see something that inspires you and that you feel you could really sink your teeth into, by all means, go do that and help us, all of us, win this election that was stolen from us before. But things have changed significantly. There's a lot more people now who are very aware of everything that's been going on. So it's going to be that much more difficult for them to do it, provided that our voter base is encouraged and motivated to get out there and have their voice heard.
Mm-hmm.
Bethany says, if we vote, they can't use our names for the opposition either. Y'all have heard about people that haven't voted showing a ballot. Yes, I have heard that. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing, is if you show up, they can't cheat. because then they get double counted, and then that goes into an investigative pile, and then it can get hashed out that way.
Yeah, that's why Dad told us to check and make sure Grandma
I
didn't
think
vote.
Grandma
this year.
didn't vote this year. Yeah. Sadly, we have to make sure that our deceased family members aren't voting.
Yeah, I did last year
Yeah.
or last time.
Yeah. And don't be afraid if you can check on people's voting and online and see if they voted or not. Check your family members that are no longer with us on this plane of existence, because I'm sure if they were voting, that they probably wouldn't be voting for Kamala,
Exactly.
the hyena.
You ready?
Yeah,
Got Bobby.
it's Bobby.
The last 4 years have awakened more people than the last 4 decades have, and the last 4 months have awakened more people than the last 4 years have, and the last 4 weeks have awakened more people than the last 4 months have. Can you see it? Because I can. I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it, I can touch it. What a time to be alive, this rapid spread through consciousness, and now it's boiling over. And I know things may look dismal right now, but please hang on to hope. The P. Diddy arrest has led to Holly weirdos turning on each other and throwing each other underneath the bus. No kid diddler could hide from the law, and trust me, everything that's done in darkness will come into the light. I know Hurricane Helene has cast a great shadow over the land, but please hang on to hope. People are showing up for people in need like never before. And the financial markets are crumbling because BlackRock in the last 4 weeks filed for bankruptcy, which is sure to affect us all in some way or another. But this is what I think. We take all the money from the sanctions imposed on BlackRock. We take every last dollar from the corrupt politicians, the corrupt pastors, and the corrupt weirdos in Hollywood that have made money off the working class for decades. Pool together all of those resources, we pour it back into our great country, and we rebuild. AI is opening opportunities for people like never before. The collective is at one of its most pivotal turning points ever. And oh my gosh, is it beautiful to see, because we see that when we lead with authenticity and with love and treat our neighbors with compassion, nothing can stop us. There's a lot of bad things happening right now, but I promise you, everything is in divine timing and everything is unfolding as it should. Stay the course, my friends, and the path will reveal itself. I'll see myself out.
Thoughts, sir?
Stay the course, my friends. And what he said rang so true to me. There's more people that woke up in the past 4 years than woke up the previous 40 years or 10 years or probably even 40 years. You know, in the last 4 months, more so than the last 4 years. In the past 4 weeks, more than the past 4 months. How has this been happening? Well, it's been happening because more and more people are waking up. And then what are those people doing when they wake people up? They're just as energized and encouraged to go talk to people about the things that they're seeing. So what does that do? That creates the conversation. So they no longer have control of the narrative that's going on, because the people are getting control of that narrative and they're spreading it. They're spreading it like wildfire, and they can't do anything to stop it. So as each person wakes up, they wake up 2 more people, and each one of those people wake up 2 more people on their own. It expands like a cat colony and it goes out of control. And that's kind of the point where we've gotten to. And that's why it's growing more and more rapidly now in terms of the percentage of people who have awakened versus the people who are still woke. And the awakened people of the truth, those people are waking up the woke. So we have to be like energized and motivated by the fact that there really is a momentum that's going to be unstoppable here very soon, and the people are going to be fed up. He did say that BlackRock declared bankruptcy. I'm not seeing anything about that, but what I am seeing is that they're going to delist from the New York Stock Exchange.
That's a big deal.
That is a big deal. Why would BlackRock want to delist from the stock exchange? Very interesting, but that's what's going on. Wow, that really is strange that BlackRock would be delisting.
Yeah, and then
from the
Steph
stock
had
exchange.
texted me that there's several banks that are closing down branches.
Of course. Well, banks have been closing down branches for quite some time.
Yeah.
I think some of that was because they were expecting civil unrest, and I think the other one is because those properties, those holdings by the banks, there's no value added to it, and the banks are looking for higher profit margins, and each one of those buildings is really expensive, and they don't care about you going to the bank because you might be part of that run on your money if you're still using a bank instead of a credit union, or whatever it is you're doing in lieu of just a bank. Aaron says delisting is usually a sign of hospice for a company. Yeah.
It's not a good sign.
No, it's not. Yeah. And so how is that going to work? And see, I think that this is going to be one of the parts that's really going to blow a lot of people's minds, because how many trillions of dollars of assets under management do they have? It's like over $1 trillion in AUM.
It's crazy amounts.
And so if I say if, like it's not the case, if BlackRock has been part of this grand conspiracy to usurp the power of the United States and the free and fair elections that happen in the free country of the United States, they are subject to probably law of war some way, somehow, right? And that means all their base are ours. And if we own everything that BlackRock owns, that's going to get redistributed. So they're going to have to take it off of the stock market, and it will also keep a crash on the market from happening when everybody finds out. Aaron says, just housing, Santino. How many empty homes does BlackRock own currently? Yeah, I think that that's going to be another part of those assets under management that are going to be doled out to the people of this country. That's going to be one of the things, because they've been talking about a crash. I keep on hearing about this crash in house prices coming up. What causes a crash in prices? A dump of a product into the market would certainly drop the value of everything that's of a similar product, right? So if you have hundreds of thousands of houses spread out throughout this nation, and you just dump those on the market, it is going to absolutely devalue every house that's out there. Now, the people that live in their house and they're not, like investors in tons of houses, people that, own their own house, they make absolutely no difference to them, especially if they haven't done refinance after refinance after refinance. Then those people will certainly be hurt, and that's sad. But the people that haven't been able to buy a house will now all of a sudden be able to buy a house again. And it will find a balance in a very short period of time. The market will correct itself once things are righted. But it's a artificial bubble that's been created by a giant corporation who's used our tax dollars to snatch up the homes and keep citizens of this country from being able to afford a house. So I look forward to the day when BlackRock gets all of their houses dumped onto the market. Yeah, exactly, Aaron. Bam, veteran homelessness solved instantly.
Yep.
Agreed. Brother Bill says 7-year Delta, October 28th, the very first Q posts, HRC, Huma, Soros, and Obama on deck. From the 28th. Yes. Let's see. Dad says Jamie Dimon sold 1.5 million shares of JP Morgan last week. Yes, he did.
Yes,
he did sell those. And there's a little bit more. It's Jamie Dimon, I guess he came out with a statement today saying that they did the best they could, and he actually did good things despite all of the challenges that were presented to him. So it sounds like Jamie Dimon is trying to make some kind of a play on the narrative after whatever's about to happen with the banks is going to happen. We're getting close, folks.
We are.
We're getting close. Aaron says if executive orders under Trump, that shit gets seized when the criminals are caught. What's the government going to do with a few million or more homes? Yeah, that's the real question. And it depends on who's in charge at the time. If it's Kamala, they'll just say, y'all keep it and we'll make these clowns pay for it. Or if Trump gets elected, then it's going to be something that's going to make the most amount of sense, because there's going to be teams of the smartest people on the planet working on how to deal with something like this. Chachi says maybe the revelation of connections between the two assassins and BlackRock are a method of disclosure as well. There's really no such thing as coincidence. Well, Chachi, you are on fire. You've got like all the best analysis. Okay, so this is going to be the Chachi show here soon.
I know, right?
And Jamie sold many more, a few million more weeks ago. Yes. Yeah, he's been trying to divest himself, trying to put it in something that's going to bode well when the collapse happens, probably trying to buy a lot of commodities. Brother Bill says the U.S. fiat dollar has been removed as the trade unit internationally and therefore is worth zero. It just hasn't hit here yet. It's coming sooner than you think. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And Aaron says, and that's why my money are not in dollars, only in stuff and some PMs and such.
Yep.
Absolutely getting close. Things might be getting spicy, but remember, God wins.
God does
And
win.
that's the thing that we need to remember is that God will win and that we will make it through this storm. We've known about this storm for a long time. We've been expecting this storm to come, and it looks like we're getting to be about at the finish line of this storm. So it's going to get a little crazy.
Yeah. That's up to Chachi, Aaron.
Yeah, that's up to Chachi.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Got shipwreck.
All right. Love you.
Red October, 2 days away from the start of beautiful October 2024. Shit's already gotten kind of wild, right? Not one more penny better go to another country until our states look like this hurricane never happened. University of Kentucky staffer says the deadly Hurricane Helen was God's way of punishing MAGA. She looks pleasant. Some shit going on. There is flooding in areas that are in the mountain. There are towns that once existed in the great state of Tennessee no longer exist. It's like they weren't even there. And there are people calling for help for other people on social media because a lot of these towns, they don't have any communication. They don't have roads in and out. They don't have food. They don't have water. What did we do last week? Let me tell you what we did last week. Last week, we invited, the president of Ukraine to the floor of our congressional halls. And then we gave that little mother fancy pants like $50 billion more. But don't worry, Kamala, she's on top of it. Kamala Harris, she tweeted out that she is ready to step up and help these states get back to the way that they were. They are monitoring the situation very closely. From her gabillion-dollar San Francisco sold-out fundraiser with all of her billionaire friends, probably watching it from there. Where the fuck is Oprah? I'm not even going to talk about Oprah. Did you know that there is like 150 celebrities that live in the great state of Tennessee and the surrounding areas, including your Lord and Savior, Taylor Swift? Her family home's in Tennessee. She ain't tweeted out, she ain't posted about, she ain't done nothing for the people that are struggling in that state. Her last Instagram post was about how she was going to slap the knob of Kamala Harris because she did her research. Not that anybody should be fucking surprised. This is just one more jab to the ribs of the poors. I don't know who else is from the great state of Tennessee and owns $1 billion mansion with his little wife and their little kid. Oh, Brad fucking Paisley. Yeah. Remember when Brad Paisley wrote a whole song for Ukraine? And then went over there and played it for him on his little chair. We're coming into Red October and it is election season. If you think things are bad now, they're probably going to get worse. They're probably going to get worse. But I don't think it's going to be like some big, huge national event. We're like frogs in a slow boil. Wake up one week and you'll go to buy some eggs and they'll be $25 a carton. Literally in a week, you won't be able to afford shit. It'll just happen. But it has slowly been building up, right? We've been slowly boiling to death. And then the election is going to happen. Trump's probably going to win. But then they have to get it certified, and it's going to be a fight. And unfortunately, we're going to be caught in the middle of it, dumb fuckers.
Thoughts?
So, yeah, surprise, surprise. Those who are so loud about Kamala Harris just don't give a shit about the people from their own state. Not surprised. They're Hollywood types. I mean, what's the difference? But then again, this is part of that exposure about the whole P. Diddy thing. We've been hearing about, now we've heard about Brad Paisley, the stupid chick, whatever the hell her name is,
Swift.
and then country singer boy that everybody used to love back in the day.
Garth.
Yeah, Garth. And so that darkness about Tennessee is coming out, and I have a feeling that there's going to be a house cleaning out there too. Sadly, it takes the unaliving of so many people through natural-ish causes that, people can finally see what's going on out there in Tennessee. It's truly sad. We know that these people don't care, but at least they're showing us who they really are. They just care about themselves and nobody else. And the suffering that other people have to go through just isn't their concern. She brought up Red October, and today is October 1st, and that's one of the Q drops for today is Red October, Q Post 4800 from back in 2020. As far as Red October goes, I think that this is going to be part of it. The Red October, I think it's going to be kind of a part of the red wave. that we've been hearing about, that tidal wave. It's finally going to happen. That it's happening as people are switching sides. But as more and more of this exposure comes out, we can fully expect to see that red tidal wave come forward. And these
I
are the
agree.
kinds of stories and articles and information that are the things that make people say, you know what? I don't really care about Taylor Swift at all. Why would I care about her? She's just fake. She just wants money for herself. Kind of like Oprah, helping all those people out there in Hawaii by asking for donations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shipwreck was spicy,
Yeah,
Bethany.
She was spicy. Demons is what they are.
Hey, Tammy, we
Hey,
missed
Tammy.
you.
Good to see you. Welcome back, friend.
Yep. You guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait.
Remember when Willie did Farm Aid?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You ready?
Mm-hmm. Do I need to read that?
He is being treated not just as a former president, but almost as though he is a sitting president. As Boris, you just noted, getting a briefing from FEMA, getting a briefing from the National Guard. That is not something that is typically just offered to a candidate. They are treating him as though he is a former president who is there to help. And one thing that I had noticed earlier during our 1 p.m. conversation was that Donald Trump did not have that much to offer in terms of resources since he is not a sitting president. But I will note that he and the campaign say that they have arrived in that area with trucks full of supplies that they plan on giving out. So there is something there for them to offer. He also said that he had a tanker truck full of gasoline, which obviously, if you've ever covered one of these storms, you understand that one of the first things and hardest things to come by is gasoline. So he said that he was going to be giving that out. He is clearly taking this seriously as a politician is on the ground, trying to show that he is there in support of the people on the ground in Georgia.
Did you hear all that? Treating him like the sitting president.
Well,
Interesting.
the people care about people who care about them. I understand what a genuine person is. These disasters are awful and they're terrifying. I'm going to say that, okay, they brought up the gas. I think that that's very important to always have some extra gas on hand, but also have cans of Fix-A-Flat. I know it pisses off every tire guy on the planet if you use Fix-A-Flat. But I had some really good friends that grew up in Miami when Andrew hit and leveled Miami. And they said that those people that had the Fix-A-Flat on their tires were able to drive around because of all the debris that gets poked into the tires and makes them flat. And it's better to have nasty, tires that you have to pay extra to get them cleaned out, but at least you have the ability to move around. And that will also be a benefit to this, to the community around you if you actually have that kind of ability. But as far as President Trump goes, he's been presidential everywhere he goes because he's an
Absolutely.
actual president, unlike this laughing hyena.
You ready?
Yes.
God will test you with suffering. God will test you with challenges. God will test you with difficulties. God will test you with hard times. But that is when the proof of your faith is manifested, not when everything is given to you, not when it's easy, not when times are simple, but in the challenges. Do you curse God or do you bless him for giving you the opportunity to experience these challenges, experiencing difficulties to become better and to get closer to him?
Thoughts, sir?
Count it all joy. Challenges suck, and when things aren't going easy, it can be miserable if we let it bring us down. But those challenges are going to come, and like I was saying yesterday, the old Marine Corps phase: enjoy the suck. Enjoy it because you've got no other choice, and on top of that, those challenges are there to make you
Might as
grow.
well just grab a box of straws.
Grab a box of straws and suck it the F up. So those challenges are there for our own development.
Yeah.
And it's easier for us to develop if we're not sitting there whining and complaining. I know that people that knew me way back when realized that's all I ever did was whine and complain. But hey, I grew up, whatever. Anyway, so that whining and complaining prevents the growth from happening. And so when you embrace what's going on in that very moment, you're able to open your eyes and your mind to the lessons that you're supposed to receive. And so if we keep that positive mental attitude, even in the most challenging of situations, we'll see the light, we'll see the path that we're supposed to go down, and we'll also learn ways in which to overcome things that we thought that we weren't capable of. But if we keep in mind the fact that we aren't given any challenges that we can't overcome with God's help, and he allows these challenges so that way he can show us that he will see us through that trying time, it only increases our relationship with our Creator. So it's a matter of perspective, and keeping bad situations in perspective is probably one of the best things you can do for yourself and everybody else around you in the long run.
Yep. I agree. You ready?
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and read that?
The border invasion is hitting New York City harder than most realize.
Ready?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Wow. During the Great Depression, they used to call them Hoovervilles. Maybe we can call this a Kamalaville.
Right.
The migrant problem is very much a problem. And the fact that these people are just waiting in lines like it's, the Great Depression and they're waiting for a bowl of soup or something, that's ridiculous. It says that we were unprepared and we're incapable of taking care of these people. So why on God's green earth would we let them through the door, be it the back door or the front door?
Exactly.
We're doing a disservice to them. Oh my God. They're treating migrants terribly. Why do they hate poor people?
Mm-hmm.
This is all a disaster. And I
It
look
is.
forward to the day when these people aren't allowed to lead anything at all.
I know.
Yeah, wait till winter comes. Exactly, Chachi. Yeah, there'll be migrant sickles, and that's not good either.
No.
Because if
that'd
we
be
take
worse.
if we take these people in, then they're our responsibility to make sure that they are able to leave out of here in just a healthy state as when they arrived. I mean, fortunately for most of them, they're being given free houses and like $10,000 on their
food stamp card.
food stamp card.
And they're getting cash.
And they're getting
too.
cash too. So, I mean, they should be. I have no idea why they're hanging around out there. They should be go living life.
I know. They probably haven't got it yet.
Yeah, that's probably the line that they're in. I need to find out
Exactly.
where that line is.
I know. Go stand in it.
Right.
You ready?
Chachi says, at least during the Depression, it was legal American citizens.
Amen, brother. Amen.
I'm trying here. I can only do so much.
Be careful, Aaron. Aaron will be lurking and walking the dog.
All right, nice.
Yep. You ready?
Yeah. Enjoy your walk, Aaron.
Want to read that, please?
RFK Jr. on what happened in 1993 that may have triggered your gluten allergy.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, it's also very heavily laden with pesticides. Wheat glyphosate is also used as a desiccant, which means it dries out wheat. So it's sprayed on the wheat right at harvest, which means it's going right into the food. And when that began in 1993, that's when you saw all the appearance of all these gluten allergies and celiac disease and wheat allergies that you don't have in Europe. You know, you can eat spaghetti here and you're going to get eczema and all of these stomach complaints. Then you go to Italy and you eat it and you get thin. But here, and then the corn is turned into high fructose corn syrup, which is just a formula for making you obese and diabetic. And Americans, you know, diabetes is one of the diseases. When I was a kid, the average pediatrician saw one case of diabetes in his lifetime. So a 40 or 50 year career, he may see one case of juvenile diabetes. And today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic.
Thoughts, sir?
Surprise! The stuff in the food's bad for you. I had never researched the whole gluten thing, but it makes sense. A desiccant. They're trying to artificially take the moisture out of the wheat before they harvest it. They're trying to make sure that they're artificially drying the wheat out. Wow.
Yep.
Wow, just everything they do. They don't care. They're just trying to get it to market. And what it does to people makes absolutely no difference to them whatsoever. Well, there's going to be some changes. And I look forward to the day when Monsanto and anybody who's ever worked for them is starving to death. Because I think that would be fair. I don't think that would be cruel or unusual because, well, they've been starving the American people to fill their pockets for, well, longer than I've been alive. So, yeah. Anyways, Chachi says in New York City, they tell you, they yell at you if you order a pizza wrong. They got to apply that attitude at least to the folks trying to take over their city. Yeah,
I know.
I agree with you 100%.
I agree.
Aaron says, you are eating Monsanto spray in the grains you eat. It's like eating antifreeze and crack. Yeah, why I stopped eating bread years ago. You tell you what, we switched over the Bob's Red Mill. I believe that is very clean. And we've shared items with our neighbor who has a gluten allergy. Absolutely zero problems whatsoever. With the flour that we purchased from Bob's Red Mill.
Doesn't hurt my stomach either.
It doesn't hurt Kay's stomach. Unpaid, shout out to Bob's Red Mill because it's actually changed like our food and the food tastes like the bread tastes like bread again. So at least Bob made bread great again. Bob made bread great again.
There you go.
Easy for me to say.
Words are hard.
Man, what is going on?
You ready?
Yeah.
You want to read that, please?
Dr. Ken Berry says they're putting sawdust in our food. Cellulose is wood chips.
You ready?
Yes.
Sawdust is fiber. People don't realize that. And actually, sawdust is in a lot of the food that you buy at the supermarket. They call it cellulose, but it's wood chips in your cheese, in many, many other things. If it says cellulose on the packet, that's sterilized sawdust. That's what that is.
Thoughts, sir?
Why am I not worried about the sawdust so much as I'm worried about? It's done it again. That's like the third time now. Thank you, Agent Smith. Anyways, I'm not worried about the sawdust so much as I'm worried about this. What did he say? It's sanitized sawdust.
Yes.
Wow.
Sanitized sawdust.
I'm more worried about the sanitizer than I am the sawdust. You can eat wood all day long. I mean, most of them. Of course, then again, the wood choice that they probably use is like hemlock or something. So who really knows?
I know. It's like, ugh. Gross. I mean, it's one of those things that you're like, what's in the sanitizer?
What exactly are we using to sanitize sawdust?
See? That's my thought. When I watched that video, that was my first thought. It wasn't the wood chips. It was, what's in the sanitizer?
I know. That's the chemical. I'm more worried about the chemical than the sawdust.
It's terrible. That's where I went.
And Lord knows I've tasted some things that sawdust would have tasted better than. So I'm not worried about the sawdust. It's what they use to sanitize the sawdust that bothers me.
Yeah, I know. You see what Dad said.
Dad says, I was wondering why I wanted to climb up trees and store nuts.
You ready?
Brother Bill says tree bark is quite tasty in its natural form.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
I want to read this up here.
Strange news from 1992,
You ready?
as
This-
opposed to strange news from.
No, you got to listen. This kind of blew my mind, but Miss Bethany Ann found this.
All
one.
right. All right. Let's see it.
ABC News has obtained a videotape that shows clearly what happened when the president fell ill. Here's White House correspondent Ann Compton.
Here's something odd I came across. This is President Bush Sr., not to be confused with his son, a later president. And in 1992, he vomited on the Japanese prime minister and then fainted. Now, the odd things. Firstly, I don't remember this happening at all. But now there's all these clips on YouTube I'm just seeing. Secondly, watch his wife. That's Barbara Bush, who some say is Aleister Crowley's daughter. Some say is a man. As soon as she sees he's going to vomit, she darts over to cover his mouth and nose. Possibly the worst thing you could do, right? Was she trying to hide something being seen from camera? And thirdly, look at this news clip. They are about to report that the president died the same day, then suddenly backtrack.
This just into CNN headline news, and we repeat, or we say right off the bat, we have not confirmed this through any other source. Stop. We are now getting a correction. We will not give you that story. It was regarding some rather tragic news involving President Bush, but...
I think I remember that part too.
Pause.
Stop. Boy, he was yelling at him. So with President Bush, like the whole puking on the shoe thing, I remember that whole thing just felt weird. I mean, the president got sick from, they sold it as the president got sick eating some bad sushi or something stupid like that, right? Whatever. We know that they're not telling us the truth about anything. It is strange that she covered his face,
Yeah.
but it's not like she's a doctor and knows what to do. It was probably just trying to protect the image of the president by covering. I don't know. That wouldn't surprise. I mean, people do weird things when like crises happen. So I don't know. But I thought it was kind of funny that they put that information out there that she was possibly Aleister Crowley's daughter, and some people say she's a man. It's like everybody's talking about this stuff now. I don't know. I find that absolutely fascinating. That more and more people are saying the quiet part out loud everywhere all the time. And so many people, like you can't get away from the truth anymore, even if you are trying to hide from it and don't want to accept it. People are still talking to you about the things that is out there, to include the people themselves. Hey, Mag Edge. Watching on the big screen. Got to organize my RV for tomorrow. Love y'all. We love you too.
We love you too.
Man, getting on the RV. You mean like Biden's wife? I don't know if that's a dude, though.
I don't know.
But I mean, Dr. Jill, you know.
Yeah. Dr. Jill. Not a doctor. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Here we go. Your favorite subject, the VA.
It's such a mixed bag.
Ready?
Yeah.
Dr. Watson, what percentage of these folks are working from, wait, let me start this way. Who's answering the phone?
Thank you for the question. The crisis responders.
Yeah, who is that?
These are staff that are across the country.
Okay, and they are who? They're veterans, they're psychologists, they're nurse practitioners, they're...
Anyone who has a social science background could be a crisis responder. So they could be any of the above.
So a social scientist from Cleveland that has never spoken to a veteran in person could answer the phone and try to talk someone off a ledge. Is that right? The answer is yes. Okay. What percentage of these social scientists are working from home?
Anyone who's on the crisis responder is working from home.
So
Working remotely.
100% of your staff, the social scientists that are answering the phone that may or may not ever actually seen a veteran in person, the 100% are working it from home. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. How much do they get paid?
I don't have that information. You can take that for the record, though.
Yeah, let's do that. How many of the vets that call 988 go on to commit suicide?
I'll be happy to take that if that's
Hit it, Dr.
acceptable to
Miller.
you, sir. The veterans who contact the Veterans Crisis Line have a higher rate of suicide and risk of suicide. The good news, and by higher rate,
Stop. So you're telling me a higher percentage of veterans that contact the Veteran Suicide Line and talk to a social scientist that's never seen a veteran in their life in person have a higher rate of suicide? Is that correct?
within 12 months of that call, yes, sir, that is correct. They have about 10.5 times higher risk. However, I'll also note that in the last 2 years of available data, we have significantly reduced the suicide rate.
Sir, if it's 10.5 times higher rate of suicide for people to contact you as of 2 years ago, what was it 3 years ago?
3 years ago, it was 10.5 times, sir.
And what is it now?
There's been a 30% reduction in suicide.
Sir, I'm a
deaths.
retired enlisted guy. Can you do the math for me on that? Like, what percentage is that?
I'm percentage related.
So it's
to
10
what,
and a half
sir?
times greater. Okay.
There have been 284 less veteran suicide deaths in the veteran crisis line population.
Roger that.
from
Okay.
2019.
I have limited time. I got you. I want all this on paper. Did you think that Zoom school online learning during the COVID buffoonery was optimal? Do you think the educational outcomes for children that did Zoom school, think they're on par with their colleagues that went to in-person school?
That's not an area I've studied, sir.
The answer is hell no. Is it more important that a veteran doesn't commit suicide or that your staff gets to work from home?
It's most important that a veteran doesn't commit suicide.
So if we are paying you to find social scientist people that can have no contact with a human veteran ever, and they're sitting on their couch, how do you know they're working? How do you know that?
We have indications of their productivity. We have indications of.
Sir, their productivity is a 10.5 times higher veteran suicide rate than someone that doesn't talk to them.
I'd also say that their productivity is 284 saved lives.
That's fantastic, but that is a horrible, horrible way to justify this. Doctor, if 10.5 times more veterans commit suicide that talk to you that don't, couldn't we reasonably say that more veterans would not commit suicide if you didn't exist?
What we can reasonably say is
you're literally sitting next to Dr. Watson. So if we could do a little Sherlock Holmesy stuff here, deductive reasoning, the answer appears to be yes. So you can disagree all you want, doctor.
Thank you.
You can. But what I'm telling you is this is not working. You actually may be contributing to the problem.
Thoughts?
You can think that all you want, Doctor. he was spicy.
He was.
That was great. So, social scientists, just in case y'all wanted to know what the social sciences are, it's economics, politics, psychology, sociology, anthropology, and history. Anthropology is the study of cultures. Sociology is how people organize themselves. Psychology is how people think and act, but a bachelor's in that means that you're qualified to be a bartender. Politics, how power is brokered and international relations are formed. And economics, how wealth is generated and economies develop. I don't know how any of those are going to be helpful to a veteran who is calling a crisis hotline.
I know.
And so it's no surprise that you have a 10.5 times greater risk of not being alive by the end of the phone call than if you hadn't contacted them to begin with. Tracy was bringing up some stats that like the I Got Your Six and a lot of those veterans organizations and just veterans in general have done tremendous things in terms of making sure that veterans have a better chance. The 22 a day is a lie. It's
more like
closer to
44,
44. 44.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know
I've
the
done
numbers
the
have been
research.
fudged. Surprise, surprise, just in case if any of y'all didn't expect that, the government didn't exactly tell the truth on the numbers.
Mhm.
And it's only gone up.
Yep.
It's only gone up because I think it was 22 after Korea, and it got significantly worse after that because, well, they really figured out how to make veterans' lives miserable.
Yes, they did.
It's the only way we could get to this point where they can have a crisis hotline that you have a 10.5 greater times chance of not completing the phone call than if you hadn't called them to begin with.
I know.
It's a crying shame. And
It
these are the
is.
things that need to be fixed.
It is. So the debate starts in 6 minutes, guys. Make sure you got your popcorn. Make sure you guys have your drinks. Run to the bathroom. I'm going to play another video. And then it should be time to
Well, they're gonna
see the shit show.
Jibber jabber for probably,
No.
No.
They didn't on the Trump.
Yeah, that's
anthem
true. They
all
didn't do
the-
that either. Okay, well, let's get this out of the way.
Ready?
Yeah.
Want to read that, please?
I'm going to have to make that one big. Representative Langworthy highlights the unprecedented FCC review bypass of Soros's 200 radio station purchase.
Ready?
Yeah.
I'd like to enter into the record a letter that I sent to the FCC on April 8th, 2024, urging the commission to thoroughly scrutinize the transfer of ownership of Odyssey Incorporated to the Soros Management Fund.
Without objection to order.
Commissioner Carr, are you aware of this letter?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and can you give me a status update on the proceedings as they relate to the transfer of ownership of Odyssey Inc. to the Soros Fund Management Company?
Yeah, as you've indicated, there's a transaction where a Soros-backed group would take ownership of over 200 radio stations across 40 different markets after the FCC originally indicating that that transaction could be reviewed and approved at the bureau level without a commission vote. It's now become clear that that is a decision before the full commission, and it's one that I would assume now or in the near future the commission would approve. I think what's interesting about it is that the FCC here is not following its normal process for reviewing a transaction. We have established over a number of years one way in which you can get approval from the FCC when you have in excess of 25% foreign ownership, which this transaction does. And it seems to me that the FCC is poised to create, for the first time, an entirely new shortcut.
Yeah, thank you. As you pointed out here and previously, these proceedings for transfer of ownership have been expedited. What exactly makes this case so deserving of an expedited proceeding so far, from what you can tell?
There is nothing about this transaction that is out of the ordinary. It's the type of thing that we see all the time, and the FCC has a process for this. The full commission itself has never signed off on a shortcut like this. What we usually do is we require people to file a petition with us. We bring in national security agencies. They can review the foreign ownership. It's probably no big deal here, but we review that foreign ownership and then we vote. Here, they're trying to do something that's never been done before at the commission level.
Yeah, I must say, Commissioner, I'm extremely alarmed at what's happening with this transaction. This is very unprecedented. Looking at the facts, it seems that the administration is giving a left-wing billionaire who is a major donor, a close ally, one of the chief funders of all of their efforts in their dark money, a free pass to take control of hundreds of local radio stations, flooding the airwaves with leftist propaganda, and I think it's blatant. What would a normal proceeding look like, Commissioner, here for the transfer of ownership in this nature?
If you follow the process that the FCC adopted back in 2016, there'd be a petition for declaratory ruling. We'd bring in national security agencies. They would review the excessive foreign ownership that's involved here. They would figure out if there's any issues. Again, probably not, but we don't know yet. We haven't reviewed it. That could take 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 months. Then the full commission would step in and decide up or down on the merits of the transaction. It looks like we got the cart before the horse this time.
It certainly appears that way. From my perspective, local radio and local media are the lifeline of communities like those in my district, much of small town America, and they offer a diversity of ideas and viewpoints that aren't available elsewhere. And it's that diversity of ideas that the left, including, partisan, very activist billionaires like George Soros, like to stifle. And they like to silence. And I'm deeply disturbed that this administration has fast-tracked a process to hand over these stations to one of their most loyal funders. And make no mistake, they know exactly what they're doing, and they welcome the result. And at this point, I will yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thoughts, sir?
The purchase, it's a lot of radio stations to purchase, by the way. Like
200?
200. Yeah, lots of radio stations. 230. Actually, 235.
Yeah.
They've been trying to go after the radio stations for, since at least Obama that I remember, because I remember that there were a lot of radio stations that were being attacked. They were specifically attacking the AM radio stations because that was the last holdout for any kind of mainstream anything that the conservatives had. That's why the conservatives had to move out to the internet. Thank God that they don't know how to meme, because it's probably the last part that ended up saving us all. So it's no surprise that they're changing hands of these radio stations. And I believe that Soros, he doesn't look the same. I'm sure he's going to be wrapped up with the whole BlackRock thing, and that all of those things will be released to the public at some point in time in the future. So this, to me, seems like more exposure to show the corruption, show that Soros really is everything that everybody ever said about that guy, and that he's doing the same thing. In the future, we just need to not listen to the naysayers when we know for a fact that people like Soros, who have tanked other economies' currencies, and now he's over here. Of course he wants to tank it because he makes money off of it every time, and he's never cared about the people that he's hurt.
Yeah.
But then again, he was raised by a bunch of Nazis, so what do you expect?
Exactly.
Chachi says, I really don't think the radio makes any difference anymore. Even sports heads to head heads to podcasts nowadays. Yeah, they do. And you probably get better reporting on the podcasts and get somebody that's more along the lines of, the kind of broadcasting that you want for your sports team. Yeah, not a surprise.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, here it is.
News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America Decides, the vice presidential debate.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance, tonight meeting for the first time.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate, who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene, and now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed. thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible. And then, of course, afterwards, to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by
your
the
time
climate.
is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the attorney general of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children? even if their kids are U.S. citizens. You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well,
Nora?
Margaret, but
Thank you. Senator, we have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
We're
because
going to turn now to the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going
we're-
to fact check. And since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process.
Kamala-
We
and
have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much-
the books since 1990.
Thank you, John.
Better gonna let that-
We want to
CBP
have
One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the
Oh,
audience can't
shut
hear you
up.
because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Yeah, keep diminishing everything he said. You know what? I don't even feel like listening to your fat ass.
Each
Look
of
at
your
you.
campaigns
Your
has
stupid
released an
face.
economic plan. So let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits
Communist
for
face.
manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2
Now they care about the
trillion
Wharton School.
dollars. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm gonna give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or
national
sales
debt
tax
now?
on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it. It would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best. More people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attacked Donald Trump's plan plans and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say, look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop. And we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
No, that's a
show
gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989.
Turned out to be a
Minnesota
lie.
Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy? You have 2
Yeah,
minutes.
well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike
Then
with
why'd
your
you go
buddies
to-
till the street lights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago. be
But
able
went
do
to
that. I came back
China
home
30 times on
and
a
then
teacher's
started a program
salary.
to
Bullshit.
take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years.
Yeah, Bethany.
And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Too bad you were never
Governor,
good at
just
any
to
of them.
follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the
No, just-
discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just.
I misspoke.
That's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests, went in. And from
But
that,
that's
I
proven
learned a
to be
lot
false.
of what needed to be in governance.
Ni hao, Governor. Ni hao.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. rising wages,
I like
rising
that shot at the
pay,
press.
an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews, is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz,
There
after
we
Roe
go.
versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies.
Oh my
It's going to
God.
get more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions.
It's not a
Let the
democracy.
individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided
That
country.
jarhead should
Governor,
know
would you like
that
to
we're a
respond and also answer the
constitutional
question about
republic.
restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography?
Crazy eyes
There's
again.
a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022, talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me. But as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the law
pro-abortion,
is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong
This
about,
was-
Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong
That is
about?
not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss.
Nobody
We have to
trusts
move
your
on.
fact
We're going to
checks.
be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
All right. Y'all need to shut up. All right, there we go. So while they go over their commercial, I'm just going to bring up a couple of things that I kind of found here. Some interesting news. But first, let's bring up a fact check of our own. And that is going to be from the National Catholic Register. And it says Tim Walz removed requirement to try to save babies born alive after abortion. So that's a lie right there, already been fact checked. And that completely changes the nature of the conversation that was going on. They do allow live birth abortions over in Minnesota. Why they want to dance around that, either they believe in it or they don't. You know, if you want to murder alive babies, hey, be proud of yourself that that's what you want to do. Don't try to hide it, because there's so much information out there that already proves that everything you said is a lie, and it completely discredits the mainstream media. Also, let me share a couple other things. Are you still watching the other?
I am.
Okay. We'll get back to that. If I have to cut off, then so be it. This popped up during our episode. It's actually the U.S. debt clock, and their secret window came open. And they're talking about unlock the future, own a share of America, the new USA dollar. It's a stock, it's a bond, it's a bankless revolution. And that's on the U.S. debt clock, and that'll take. It's kind of pointing to the fact that the dollar is about done. Then let's see. This just popped up. It's Blaze Media. List of many powerful people allegedly implicated in Sean Diddy Combs scandal will be exposed, says attorney for the victims. So that exposure is happening. We are going to find out a lot more about that here moving forward in the future. And that's probably going to overcome any of the chatter about this. I've noticed that Walz gets angry pretty easy, and he's got those creepy eyes where they're just wide open. And then he had that pinched face, and then he had like the center of his eyebrows up. I don't know how he does that, but whatever. Anyways, that's a look of concern and worry. He was looking for a life preserver to be thrown out to him because he was getting his ass kicked, and there really wasn't anything that hardcore thrown at this dude. I understand some people are talking, you know, the Q stuff that he might be a white hat.
I don't believe that.
I'm not seeing indicators of that because he looks like he's legitimately concerned and worried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Bethany's had to put up with him for a long time,
Mhm.
and I trust her.
And
do.
I do as well. I very much trust her. It's the abortion conversation has taken way too long. And then with the children's in cages thing that they're bringing it up again. It's like your boy Barry did that shit back in the day when he was taking all those children. And under the border czar's tutelage here, how many children have gone missing?
F Clan.
Ain't nothing you should see. What? See him with them. God, why did you even put that up?
Because I didn't finish reading it.
Maybe you should read it all the way.
Yes.
Yes, dear. Anyway. Walls looks, I mean, it's actually much more of a debate, but it's not like Kamala could actually have a debate, even with her little, communicator earrings.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be a little bit more calm and more of a traditional debate. But I'm going to say that Walls doesn't look like he's doing very well. He kind of looks like he's losing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Let's
F
see.
Clan just pops in to mess with me.
I know, right? Yeah.
I thought
F-Clan-
F Clan loved me, but now I see.
Now you got to make sure that you read everything he says before you pop his comments up again.
Here we go.
Here we go. Oh, wait.
Welcome back to the CBS
Oh,
News
shut up.
presidential debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you.
Shall not
earlier
be
this year,
infringed
for the
because of
first
people
time,
like you.
The parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it?
Deal with the mental health
Here's
crisis.
something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is just your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks. and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills? They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be
We
that
used to have
difficult.
gun
You can
training
still keep
classes
your
in school.
firearms, and we can make a difference. We
Just
have
a
to. If you're
thought.
listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's
appreciate
doing
you saying
okay.
so.
Christ have mercy. It is awful, and I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay. First of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time.
He's friends with the shooters?
I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And
Because of y'all's
several things I want to
policies.
mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that. But I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And
It's
I think
not
what we end up doing is
stigmatization.
we start looking
It's
for
having an
scapegoats.
honest look.
Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns.
I know,
there are
they go
things that
off
you
and
can
do their
about
own
it.
thing
But I do
all the
think
time.
that this is
Ours go
and I think this is a
party,
healthy
it's
conversation.
crazy.
They're
We have to
wild.
There's a
ground them.
capacity to
I
find
know.
solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes
BlackRock
to the
owns
high
all of 'em.
housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be
BlackRock.
shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses.
You know, the people
Those of you
trying to
listening
take out
tonight,
Trump.
That house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen
That's because all your buildings are burnt down.
Put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising? And what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill. One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment, but Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Of course you will.
Well, of course that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's the
your
study?
time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis. I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top
funny
problems
how
facing Americans is the
Vance
high
doesn't
cost
ever get
of
to
healthcare.
finish anything.
Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill, but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do. But I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do
He sure
is
does
let
get to
insurance
talk a lot,
companies
doesn't he?
pick who
Yeah,
insure,
they don't
because
ever
guess what
tell him
happens?
his
You
time's
pay your
up.
premium, it's
I
not
know.
much. They're figuring they're not
Time
gonna have
moves
to pay
different
out
when
to you.
Tim Walz
But
is
those of you a
talking.
little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then
So
what
you
happens
think the
is
individual mandate's a good idea?
you shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We
Of
have a
course,
number
you're not going to
subjects
let
discuss.
Vance talk.
Margaret, let's talk about families in America.
What the hell do you know about families?
There is a
See, you can't
childcare
even say it
crisis
without
in
choking.
this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How
Because we're
long
too
should
busy
employers be
slaving away for
required to pay
BlackRock and
workers while they are
Vanguard?
home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain
You didn't
amount of
have to
time.
heal.
What we know is that gets the child off to a better start. The family works better. We stay in their employers. We get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue. Those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set.
Because the
for
medical
wealthiest
industry
amongst
is
us.
broken.
He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will
Ain't
tell you,
getting there
go
with you.
to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is
I don't
up.
want a
But
federal
Senator, do
program
you
because they
support
never
a national
work.
paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats too have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very
Maybe we
important
should make it
substantive
so that
difference
way there's a
between Donald
single
Trump and
income
Kamala Harris's
household
approach.
is possible
look,
again.
If you look at the federal programs
an
that we
idea.
have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because look, it is unacceptable. And, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families, cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the childcare shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortages,
They're
we
gonna
just
cut
don't
his
have
time.
enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz,
Actually, let him finish.
ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest
They
issue.
don't.
Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that plays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying.
That y'all
I don't think
created.
Senator Vance or that and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is the question you
healthcare
asked is,
scholarship?
you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another 4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results.
Here we go.
Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud.
That's
The
not what they
governors
said.
Of every state
They said
in
they
the
weren't going to
nation,
look at it. You lying
Republicans
sack of
and
shit.
Democrats certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th.
Illegally.
Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much
That's
bigger threat to
actual
democracy than
information.
anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't.
Because he
140
didn't.
Police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag.
Lies.
Several later died. And it wasn't
Lies.
just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator,
No, he didn't.
it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You
Good thing
shake
we're not a
hands,
democracy.
And then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already
Yeah,
laying
y'all have
the
been doing that.
groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So
Do you
I think
hear what you're
this
saying?
issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power.
Yes, y'all
And here we are,
usurped
4
the
years later,
presidency.
in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's
How much
tearing
you
our
want to bet
country
they're not
apart.
going to do that?
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the
Your
issue
lies.
was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that
As
there's
it should.
censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do
Yes, y'all
something,
keep
that's not-
doing
That's
that.
not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen
Yeah,
that
y'all done
product.
that too.
I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen.
We're a republic.
And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is
Has she tried to-
that is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further, but you guys attack us for not believing in
Timmy's
democracy.
mad.
The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the
threatening or
power
hate
of
speech.
government and big
Yes,
tech
y'all
to
do.
silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this
Speech
present
you
political
hate is
moment.
not
I would
hate
like
speech.
Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and
Well,
then
he's
let's
not-
come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see
No,
a
but you put your
candidate out
goons on
there
him.
who refused, and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not. It's not
No, he
anything
didn't.
anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And
You
I think
first.
Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen.
Your time
We will
is up,
be
sir.
Right back with both of our
Oh,
candidates.
God, there's
the
more.
CBS News Vice Presidential.
Okay, so we don't need to hear those heifers talk. God, there was so much there. I got so many fact checks. Hold on, let me get to. I mean, again, I think a lot of people are gonna believe the side that they believe. I think that there might be some people who saw some stupidity there, and I think that the fact checks are really going to help things out. In terms of some of the crap that they were spewing. Let's see. Let's go with this. In terms of the migrants not taking citizens' homes, California Democrats, this is Politico, by the way, California Democrats want to help undocumented immigrants, that would be illegal aliens, buy homes during a presidential race. Let's see. At a first in the nation, California proposal would make undocumented immigrants, illegal aliens, eligible for up to $150,000 in state-supported home loans, just as immigration has become an incendiary topic in the presidential election.
Okay, next.
Let's see, next. This would be the Heritage Foundation, deluxe housing for illegal migrants, but not for the military. And then I highlighted it down here, just a quick little key thing. The Biden administration is paying $2.5 billion in taxpayer funds for immigrations and custom enforcement to house illegal migrants. ICE provides them not only food and a bed, but medical and dental care, recreation, and other services to meet higher standards than county detention systems. So they get a better life than the people that are incarcerated. That's not a good look. Let's see, next. Share this tab instead. Government Accounting Office releases report on institutional investments in single-family housing rental. Institutional investors collectively owned 450,000 single-family homes, according to the GAO. The 5 largest investors, that would be BlackRock, Vanguard, et cetera, owned nearly 300,000 homes on their own. So how does that tie to the illegal migrants? Well, that's because they're the ones that are in bed with people like Walz and those in Congress and whatnot. And they say, hey, look, we need some money. We got these houses. You got these people that need places to live. Yeah. And yeah, I haven't even got to that yet. Let's see. And this is how they go about doing it. BlackRock doesn't own many homes directly, but it does invest in real estate and has investment in Invitation Homes, a real estate rental company that owns about 80,000 single-family rental properties. And that's just one of them. By the way, BlackRock owns about $60 billion in real estate assets. Not all of those are single-family homes, but we know what they're doing with those. And that's one of the problems. Here's a little sweet one from Breitbart. Fact check, CBS moderator claims Iran is weakened under Biden-Harris. As you can already tell, it was a lie. The Iran is not weakened. As a matter of fact, they're doing better. J.D. Vance was obviously correct about that one, as he was about so much more. Then all of the other crap that they tried to tell us about the election not being stolen, et cetera, et cetera. We all know that the election was stolen. That's why they were too busy trying to silence American citizens who have a freedom of speech. And it's not yelling fire in a crowded theater, especially if we aren't allowed to get a redress for our grievances. And our grievances is that we saw some people that were stealing the election right in front of our eyes. Let's just take the simple one in Georgia, where they were taking reams of paper and taking them from the top of the machine counter and putting it right back into the input of the machine counter. And that's just one incident. Never mind the fact that so many polling places in these questionable states had water mains break everywhere. Are they back? Oh, geez. Why is their sound?
Coin toss and
Oh, there you go. Now y'all got it figured out.
Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised
It's not a
as anybody
democracy.
of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie
Of
Sanders
thieves and
to Dick
crooks.
Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of
Dick
folks in
Cheney.
between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you that that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different
No
option.
excuse for you.
Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to
And
be
you
afraid.
should be.
Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy.
Communism
She's bringing real
forward.
solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say, I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
It wasn't a
And I'm
debate.
Nora O'Donnell, and a reminder.
It was you heifers talking too much and letting that weird dude keep on running his mouth. Oh, God, with a whole bunch of lies. Aggravating, aggravating, aggravating. Whew. Okay, what is there really to say about this? They keep up with their talking points. Their talking points are never ending, even though they're never true. Yet for some reason, it still keeps on working. Not a single person that's been elected understands what a constitutional republic is, apparently. Sick and tired of this. Thank God there's no more debates. Because it's just a clown show. It's a clown show where they're just making it up as they go along. You know, they sit there, they'll fact check JD Vance, and then they won't let him speak. And they let Horsey Boy sit there, talk away, and then they cut his mic. Absolute crap. They went over by 6 seconds. Either way, I mean, it's what it is. They're trying to make it look somewhat decent in terms of their
Fairness.
Yeah, fairness, is they're the ones that sit there and talk about Fox News.
Yeah.
As if they're any better.
Yeah.
Go Team Blue.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, let's move on.
Trust me when I say I know life is beating your ass right now. And I know you tired of being tired. You tired of being strong. But at the end of the day, it's not many people like you on this earth, bro. It's not. You feel what I'm saying? Like, you different. You special. And the fact that you tired, you keep getting up and you keep being that special person for people on this earth. So I'm sorry to tell you this, but you need to keep fucking getting up. You need to keep trying. Because at the end of the day, we really need you on this earth, realistically. If I'm really being honest, we really need you.
Bill. Brother Bill. Bite your tongue, sir.
Just so y'all can see what's going on, Bill said, I have to say, I'm leaning towards Kamala and Horsey Man now. They've really convinced me. Not. All right, back to the last video there. Got to keep on going. And you know what? You've been making it through, and we seem to forget to look back at all the trials and tribulations that we've been through, especially after listening to this. It's frustrating. It's aggravating. We see that the election was stolen, and this is what we've got going on, and it's miserable. We got the dock workers now, and who knows what's going to happen with the supply chain and the dollar and everything. But the thing is you have made it through each and every one of these challenges. You have made it through 100% of the challenges that have been up against you your entire life. And yet you're still here and you're still standing. And as we go through these more and more difficult challenges, as we get closer and closer to this election, it's going to get more stressful. It's going to get more, intense. But the thing is you've had the strength, whether you believe it or not. You have had the strength to make it through each and every one of those things, and you're still standing here. You're still standing there, rather. That should say a lot about your own perseverance. And the fact that you've made it through all of these challenges in your life, and we've had to deal with all of the just everything going on in the world around us, means that you're here for a reason. It's because you have something to offer everybody around you. You, each and every one of you, are important to the people in your own little world. And the fact that you've made it through all of these challenges and that you've kept your chin up and that you kept trudging along when you just wanted to give up means that you have a lot more in that reserve tank than you thought you did. Right. And it's going to be very important moving forward as these challenges get more difficult. So recognize what it is you're being asked to do. And that is to be strong and to continue on and to hold that flame of liberty and make sure that people know that it's okay to be confident in our form of government. And despite all of the crashing economy and everything, that you can help people realize it's going to be okay.
I agree.
Stick with what you know and recognize how important you truly are to everybody around you. Mm-hmm. And know that if you weren't around, all of those other people would sorely be lacking without your presence.
Absolutely.
We're truly grateful that y'all joined us. Yeah, please season away, ma'am.
They always say that if you just keep getting up, you've won. And I agree with that. Because we can't give up. We can't give up when it comes to this election. We can't give up with what's going on. We can't give up with trying to red pill people. But most importantly, we can't give up on ourselves. And we can't give up on knowing that everything's going to be okay. Because I promise you, whether you think it or not, if you weren't here, someone would desperately miss you.
Or need the thing that only you can provide.
Yeah, exactly. So always get up, put one foot in front of the other. You don't have to see the whole path, just one step at a time.
Beautifully said. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us on this really long episode tonight. Hope y'all enjoyed it. But we are truly grateful that each and every one of you joined us here tonight. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, Rumble, and Pilled.net.
And if you haven't already, please take a moment and give us that virtual hug. If you're over on YouTube or Rumble, hit that thumbs up. If you're over on Pilled.net, it went down, but take that red pill anyway. If you're over on X, smash that heart. And you know what, Tracy? Things are happening. And right now, what's happening is we're all being tested by the devil. So just breathe and know that everything's going to be okay.
Everything is going to be fine. It may not look the way we want it to, and it may be challenging, but it doesn't mean that you can't make it.
Exactly.
Hang on tight, folks. I know it's getting crazy out there, but we have faith in each and every one of you, and we know that the divine providence will deliver this nation yet again.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great night. We love all of you. Be safe, and God bless.